now I would like to introduce Nicole. Okay, so Nicole, shall I pass over to you?
Yes, please. Let me share my screen with us all.
Okay.
Right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to Rachel, first of all, for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here and to be sharing with you some of my experiences as an academic advisor. In fact, I have been an advisor since 2011. That is when the AA system was first in place. Despite that, I've so far only had around 50 plus advisees since the first year I was an academic advisor. So I have to claim here that I'm definitely not as experienced as many of you here who are taking care of a lot of students whom I'm sure would find it actually more challenging than I do. So I'm here just to share a little bit about my 2 cents with you and what I have been doing over these years, what I've learned. And I need to emphasize at the beginning that it has been a very illuminating learning experience for me overall, as I get to know the different needs of my advisees and as I get to work together with them. So after that quick introduction, I'd like to actually divide my sharing into 2 halves. At the beginning, I'll explore together with you how I see and how we see our roles and responsibilities as academic advisors, and how do we actually begin. And hopefully, if time allows, within the 15 minutes of my sharing, we'll have a little bit of a conversation. Otherwise, I understand that Rachel will set aside the last 10 minutes for Q&A. So we'll see how we go with time. So first of all, our roles and responsibilities. I've actually designed a little activity for you. In a while, I'm going to show you in this white space a word search. And in the word search, there will be all the words that you could associate with your role as an academic advisor. What I would like you to be doing, we can do this all together amongst all our participants here. I would like you to go to the top of your screen. I'm sure many of you are already very familiar with Zoom. Go to View Options, click down to the first option. You'll see Annotation or Annotate. You can pull out your annotation bar, and I'd like everyone to do this at the same time so that we can, as quickly as possible, identify all the potential roles that you see yourself to have or that you already are experiencing as an academic advisor. So I'll put up the, I see some circles there. I'll put up the word search in a while, and as soon as it comes up, feel free then to just make your choices according to what you see there. They could be vertical, they could be horizontal, they could be downwards, they could be upwards, they could be from left to right, they could be from right to left, but most of them are easy to catch, so it's not put there to trick you. Here it goes. So you can do that. Okay, mentor is the first one I identified. Anything else? There are actually 20 plus words there. Compass. Thank you for spotting this. I definitely see myself to be a compass very often. I'll share more with you about that. Support or supporter. Yes, for sure. Leader, leading them, guiding them, as Rachel was talking about earlier on. I see myself to be their planner, yes. Well, work is one of the things. Academic side is one of the many aspects we need to take care of. Guide, I saw that being spotted. I saw the word comfort circled. Comforter, sometimes I do feel I am so. Okay, their referee, very often they would approach you since you've been advising them for 4 years, 5 years. They feel that you know them really well, and so they might be inviting you to offer them some kind of a reference. Anything else? Should be still quite a number. That's quite a long word. in the first line. And other words around, a lot in the middle. Do you spot anything else? Feel free just to highlight, circle them. Okay, I don't see any new words emerging now. So maybe what I will do, it's just meant to stimulate you to think about the multifaceted roles you might play as an academic advisor. What I am now going to do, allow me to just clear the drawing so that we can see what are some of the words I have come up with here. Let me see, let me just clear it for us. And I'll take us to what words I've come up with. All right, so as you can see here, actually, there are many. I won't strain your eyes. So rather than asking you to look at it here, I've actually prepared a whole list for you. As you can see, it could be as long as that. Advisor, comforter, compass, confidant, coordinator, couch, counselor, critic, detective, Google, guide, interrogator, listener, mentor, monitor, navigator, network, observer, organizer, planner, pointer, psychologist, sometimes, referee, a resource person, as Rachel mentioned just now, a roadmap, stimulant, and supporter. So I think over these years, with all the different academic advisees I've worked with, I feel that I'm playing a different combination of roles. And this is what has proven the experience to be such an illuminating one. So it's very much a learning journey. And in a moment, I'd be very happy to share with you some of the experiences I've had so far working with specific students. So let me highlight how I see my role in the most recent 2 years, I would say, starting from last year when online teaching and learning actually began. I found that it's just been so useful to keep reminding myself that I am a listener, and also totally in line with what Rachel mentioned earlier on. I think all students are just, all my advisees are just so very different. Some of them would come to you with a very detailed plan and would surprise you, as Rachel says. I had a student last year who would come to me every time with a long agenda of what with a very detailed plan of what he has already been doing, what he hopes to continue to be doing. And sometimes an hour is not enough to hear about his plans, but I just find it so enriching to be doing so. And it's only through your understanding of your advisees that you realize what they need. So I think being a listener is also important. And sometimes I almost feel like I'm a confidant as well, where when they share with me some specific challenges they're encountering in their studies, with their social relationships, and so on. At times, I feel like I'm beginning to be a counselor to them. But what I keep reminding myself is that, well, yes, I can definitely help in that respect. I can support them as much as I could. I can be their comforter. I can be a couch at times, but I'm definitely not the expert. I may not have the expertise to be a psychologist, as you saw just now in the list, or a counselor. So I need to remind myself, as Rachel mentioned, that I'm definitely not working on my own. There are many support services in the university that could be offering support to these students. And I often find myself looking up, say, for example, searching for something on the web on where I can direct them to. Very often it's CEDARS for the many services and very helpful services they offer, as Rachel mentioned just now. And I think it's just important to remind ourselves that we do have to share our responsibilities with other people who might have a stronger expertise in certain areas compared to us. But at the same time, I also find that as an academic advisor, I do have to be very proactive. And I believe it is even more important under the revised system, where our advisees are not expected to be seeing us once per semester. I would say the new system has been extremely useful because once the student's GPA drops to more than 0.7, we are alerted to it. And I had this experience, I think, over the last 2 years, especially with students who are receiving a scholarship who would require more attention and more support from us. But I feel that I'm more of a detective because sometimes students might feel a bit shy, might feel a bit inhibited, they might think they might just feel a bit guilty of having not done so well, and they might not be approaching you proactively. And sometimes when it gets to 0.7, it's probably a little late. It's a bit challenging for us to do what we feel we could have done a bit earlier. So I actually, when I say I'm a detective, every now and then I would actually go up to the system, to the SIS system, to see how my students are doing. For example, last year I had one. I know from my other colleagues that she hasn't been doing too well. So I've been meeting her. I have got to hear about some of the challenges she's experiencing. I know that it's not just about her studies, it's not at all about procrastination, but many other things at a personal level. And her GPA has actually been pretty low. Every now and then I would be sending her emails to ask her how she's doing. But then very often her messages come back pretty positive. And her most recent one to me at that time was, well, I'm doing well, don't worry, I'm even getting an A on a course. And well, I think it's important that we trust our advisees and we believe in them and we acknowledge the fact that they are improving. But I thought, okay, let me just go up and check whether it's with all the courses that she's doing. And I realized that, oh yeah, actually that's an A's, and it definitely deserves my praise. Given to her, some encouragement, but at the same time, she hasn't been doing too well, probably also because of the letter grades thing that Rachel mentioned earlier on. So we need to be in touch with these students, I would say, sooner, to acknowledge them for their efforts, but to recognize their strengths, but also to let them know in certain areas how they could be doing better. And I think as Rachel mentioned just now, to ask questions. That's what I find extremely useful. And I think that's why I would also consider myself to be a guide for sure, but also a critical guide, to be thinking about in specific areas how they could be doing better, how they could be making more informed decisions. And when I'm saying that, I'm actually referring to one of the advisees that I mentioned just now, who comes to me every time with a long agenda of what he plans to be doing. He asked me recently whether it is worth considering doing a third major in our faculty. Basically, you graduate with a double major in education and in English. And he asked whether he should be doing a third major. And when I first got to hear about it, I thought, wow, that's really challenging. It's going to be very stressful, maybe a very enriching experience, but would he actually be capable of doing so? Eventually, I'm convinced because of my contact with him these 2 years, and I feel that he probably it's worth his consideration, at least since he's only in year 2 and he can start planning ahead. But then I feel that it's through my asking of questions, it's through my understanding of him, it's through my listening to what he has been doing over the past year that made me think, maybe it's worth really thinking about it. And with that, I actually direct him to maybe the program director of the course, where he would like to be doing a third major in, to ask, how possible is it in the next few years? Actually, I'm not that familiar with what he plans to be doing in a different faculty altogether. So definitely, I think it's important to remind ourselves to release our responsibilities, to share it with other colleagues who might be able to help. And I find myself over these years very often directing my advisees to some of the very, very resourceful colleagues in the faculty who might be more informed when it comes to curriculum requirements and expectations. In our faculty, it's a little bit challenging because it's we have a BA and BEd course, for example, and it goes across 2 faculties. So very often I feel that I try my best to help. I look at the handbooks, but I may not be as informed as our resourceful administrative colleagues. But at the same time, another group of people that I find to be very, very helpful in supporting us in our role as academic advisors would be the faculty student advisors. And these could be advisors that they could be advisees of mine. They could also just be students of mine who are in their senior years. And I feel that very often I can trust them totally because they would be giving my younger advisees lots of advice on course selection, which our students often have difficulties with. I can help them at the interest level. I can give them ideas about assessment requirements and so on. But their course mates or their seniors could definitely be in a better position to advise them on how their first-hand experience has been on those courses, what they found challenging, what they have been finding to be very positive gains that they would like to share with them. And when it comes to a choice between pass, fail, or letter grade, again, I feel that the academic advisors, student academic advisors, would sometimes be able to be more convincing than we are for sure. From our perspective as academic staff, as advisors, well, perhaps a letter grade might be something that we tend to be advising them on for obvious reasons. But if we were to say this, I don't think it's, it may not be the best option, definitely for all our students, but it might not be as persuasive as if it comes from a student, for example, who was originally wanting to go on exchange, but because he or she has chosen a pass-fail that has, in a way, limited his or her options to go to certain universities in certain countries that he or she would like to go to. So I think it's a combination of all these, and putting that together, I see myself more also as an organizer, not so much as a planner, because I think we shouldn't be the one who would be like in the forefront telling them exactly what they should be doing, but we're more of, I see myself more of a companion to them, to be supporting them in making the most informed decisions in the light of their strengths, their aspirations, their plans, and eventually where they see themselves to be in certain years and time. So very much, as I've mentioned, I think since the beginning of my sharing, I see myself very much as a learner. I learn to do a better, play a better role as an academic advisor as I work with individual students who are very much unique in themselves. So exactly, how do we begin? I think I would ask the question before I ask how do we begin is exactly where do we begin? As I've mentioned, our students are very unique in themselves. So I would go with what my students are telling me and what I know about them. Just now, Rachel has spelled out for us the many challenges that our students have encountered. But even just as simple as, not as simple in fact, but the last item, stress. It could be stress caused by family issues. It could be stress caused by academic factors. It could be related to relationships, which could be boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. It could be friendship issues and so on. So I think it's being a good listener. I think it's really something that I would put at the top of my priority list. And I feel that exactly what Rachel was saying just now, we can definitely capitalize upon technology, the e-learning resources that we have. And I'd like to share with you how I go about doing so, especially last year. And also, as I see, at least for the rest of this semester, it's very likely that a lot of it would go online, despite it being a dual mode. But at the same time, there are advantages of doing things online. I feel that when I meet my advisees at the beginning, I do want to get to know them. And from my experience from the beginning of this semester until now, there have been students that I'm teaching, that I am advisor to, that actually feel a little bit uncomfortable even showing themselves through Zoom, for instance. And one thing that I've discovered is that virtual backgrounds are just so helpful. I would actually set up a meeting with my students and telling them in advance, why don't you come with a virtual background that you would really like to show us, that you feel you would love to have, and tell us why you've chosen that one. And that might be a good warmer, just one way to get them started, to get them to tell you a little bit about themselves, even if they just talk about color, places they've been to, and so on. It starts to help you get to know them better. And of course, I think because they have a virtual background, there's a greater likelihood that they would show themselves. And I think the visibility is something really important, because very often students are telling us they find it difficult to make friends. And obviously, in a class where everyone just has a black screen, it's really, really hard to get to know one another and to feel comfortable in a group, to start making friends, to start to socialize. And when it comes to making friends and socializing, expanding their social circle, and when it comes to academic advising, I found it a lot more helpful. I've tried a range of modes over the past 10 years, and I've found it to be usually a lot more helpful if I start by meeting my advisees in groups. It could be groups composed of students from the same year group, my beginning advisees, or it could be some of my year one students together with some of my year two or ones in the senior years. And I think as they get to know more people, especially now in this still partially virtual environment, it gives them the chance to at least get to know more people, to reach out to certain people, to know who to turn to seek help. And I've also had, in the meetings I've had since the start of this academic year, because it happens on Zoom, they can send their friends or people that they would like to ask specific questions private messages. And sometimes it's very helpful. After a meeting, sometimes my maybe year two faculty student advisors would tell me, actually, they asked me this question and I answered them in written form. So don't worry, I've actually dealt with this question already. But then the fact that you know that it's happened, it's actually pretty helpful. And at the same time, you know these students' concerns, and you also know that there's a lot more happening on Zoom that is beyond your understanding. So I feel that e-learning definitely has a lot that we can capitalize upon. Talking about that, I've also found it very helpful to have to introduce my students to not just the faculty student advisees, but maybe some of my other advisees in the senior years, for the reasons that I mentioned just now, on aspects such as course selection, adjusting to university life, and very often campus resources. I find that my FICs, in fact, know more than I do, because they actually are basically in touch with this on a day-to-day basis, so they can easily direct them in the right direction. Rather than setting up a study plan with my students, or definitely setting academic goals are important, I feel that it's sometimes more pleasant to the students to be presented with something that I would call a wish list rather than a study plan. I understand the academic advising office has different forms that we could take our students through. But usually when I started with that, I find that it's just because of the name of the form that they might find it a little bit pressurizing to be, okay, now you're here to work on a study plan with me. So I would call it more of a wish list. What do you want to achieve by the end of year one? What do you hope to be working towards in year two, and so on? And with that, they come up with a wish list. And I think now that we are approaching the reading week, which is the coming week, it would be a lovely idea to do some ongoing review with them in whatever way they see fit. The advising office no longer requires us to meet them once a semester, but I find it actually helpful, especially now in the online environment, when a lot of the times when you send them emails and you ask them how are they doing, they'll be saying, I'm fine, don't worry about me. But actually there might be a lot going on in their lives that we might want to help them with. So sometimes I might just invite them to come together for a short, even just half an hour Zoom meeting, and I find it easier to do it through Zoom sometimes, because you can then get more people with you at the same time if you would like to have more than one person, and to ask them the question as to whether they feel that their wishes are beginning to come true, and if they are, why? If they're not, why not? And what else do you think you might want to do? Very recently, I've been working with a student on trying to move her slowly out of her comfort zone of not showing herself, to showing herself, to be engaging more in discussions with us, and of course in class as well. And I find this wish comes true idea a little bit easier to implement than to say, how much have you done with regard to your study plan? Can you put a tick across the list of things that you have done, and what have you not done? So I'd rather call it a wish, so it feels more warmer, more lighthearted to them. And finally, I think, again, with regard to what we could do with technology, I actually have set up a system myself, which over the years it has been evolving, but eventually I now call it my whispers to Nicole, because it's been working well over the last few years, a system where they can easily just be in touch with me, send me a message to let me know how they are doing. And I call this little block my whispers to Nicole. Very recently, actually, just a couple of days ago, I had an advisee send me a message. And in this message, one of her lines was, well, I love this. When it says my whispers to Nicole, does it mean you're like a psychologist that I can tell you any of my problems and I can get answers to? And she started sharing quite a bit with me. So I think just the name we call to the messaging system that we create is going to help in itself. Drawing conclusions to my sharing here, I think I would say, on the whole, developing a trusting relationship with our students is just so important. We trust them and they trust us. So I would like to encourage us all to enjoy our learning journey as academic advisors. As I've mentioned, over the years, I found it a very rich, colorful, illuminating experience, and perhaps also an empowering one, because it helps me get to know a lot more about the faculty, our different curriculum, our systems, our university as a whole. And I would encourage you actually to engage more in this co-learning journey with your advisees. So I think on this note, I'll bring my sharing to a close, and I look forward to sharing more of my experiences with you over the year, and also maybe to engage in some discussions, conversations with you later on in our last 10 minutes of today's session. Thank you.
Okay.